Hello guys, welcome to the football mess. It's gonna be slippery as usual. Today I'll be talking about African football players who play around the world, but precisely in Europe. That's where I'll be basing today. There was a controversial video that was posted by Enzo Fernandez, the Argentinian player and Chelsea, representing Chelsea Football Club. It was controversial in the context of which he packaged the message. And majority, there was a lot of backlash around the world of racism and to me, to me just spoke the minds of majority of Africans. Year in, year out, these European countries taking football players from Africa. The best football players from Africa, majority of them represent European countries. For instance, they referred to France. In Africa, France is referred as an African team. That's why majority of Africans support France national team, be it in Euros, World Cup, or any other tournament that France participates. The amount of quality players from Africa that play for France, it is astonishing. Just for instance, if Mbappe represented the country of his origin, Cameroon, Saliba, just imagine how Cameroon will be formidable. But these European countries, most of them, and that's why Jose Mourinho, the special one, once said, and I will quote him, "There's no national team from Africa that will ever win the World Cup. Because the best football players, majority of them, they are taken with this national team from other countries." I think it is high time majority of African players come back home and represent the countries of their origin. Because the amount of disrespect that these players are shown worldwide, it is very, very absurd. Because majority of these players, they didn't choose the country of their origin. They found themselves black and their origin, their roots is from Africa. They are not of any lesser God because there's no God, the God of whites and blacks. We serve one God. But the amount of discrimination, victimization of black football players in Europe, it is disgusting. It is unpalatable. It is frivolous. Because, for instance, I will give you examples. Why is it that there is no a statue of Yaya Toure outside Manchester, the Etihad Stadium, the stadium of Manchester City, but there is a statue of Kun Aguero outside Manchester City Stadium? Who was the engine of Manchester City when they won their first English Premier League trophy after 45 years or 42 years? Who was the engine? And I remember we'll quote Roberto Mancini because he said this. He said Manchester City were rubbish, were shit if Yaya Toure is not there. When they lost to Manchester United and won the league on the final day, why is it that there is no statue of Didier Drogba outside Stamford Bridge? This shows you the amount of victimization of black players in Europe because of just a very small confrontation between Yaya Toure and Pep Guardiola. That's why Yaya Toure was sold when he was playing in Barcelona to Manchester City. Few years later, Guardiola came to Manchester City. The same thing happened. He was thrown to the trenches. Finally, he left Manchester City as a legend. But they had the audacity of putting Kun Aguero because he was scoring goals. He was more important than Yaya Toure, the engine of Manchester City those days. This is total nonsense. For instance, Victor Osimhen galvanized Napoli to its first Serie A title for decades. since the days of Maradona in Napoli. But they had the audacity of discriminating him and abusing him through the social media pages of Napoli when he missed just one penalty. One penalty. That is the following season after winning the Serie A title. And I was even shocked when I saw Victor Osimhen signing a new contract in Napoli after all that absurdity. For instance, just the concluded Euros, there was a survey that was carried in Germany. The majority of people from Germany complained that the national team of Germany has very many black players in it. Very many black players. They just concluded Euros. Who was the best player in that team? Musiala. That shows you the lack of respect towards African players. And it is high time the football associations of Africa rise up to the occasion and decide to change the football narrative of Africa. Because there's a lot of corruption in African football. There's a lot of tribalism in African football. There's a lot of exploitation in African football. Starting with Kenya, there's a lot of corruption. There's no way you can call a player who's playing in the European nation to come and play for a country and there are no allowances. If a player gets injured, he goes back to his club to be treated there. It has happened severally in Kenya or other African countries. Players are giving out warnings of strike. They are going to strike if they are not paid their allowances before a tournament begins or in the middle of a tournament. It is high time the football associations of Africa rise up to the occasion and return the dignity of the African football. That's the only thing that will persuade these players who play in the represent European countries to come back and play for their countries of origin.